Mummy's with the maggots now.
We interrupt this program to bring you...
All right, everybody. My name is Kevin.
My name is Adam.
And I'm Julie.
And we are the Real Movie Guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, the series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at Evil Dead Rise. Directed by Lee Cronin, starring Mirabai Pease, Richard Crouchley, and Anna Marie Thomas. A twisted tale of two estranged sisters' reunion is cut short by the rise of a flesh-possessing demons, thrusting them into a primal battle for survival as they face the most nightmarish version of family imaginable. Okay, Adam, we're back in this. Julie's new to this little adventure, but me and Adam, if you haven't checked it out already, for Real Terror Month in October, we reviewed the entirety of the Evil Dead series, minus the TV show, but we looked at all the mainline films, and I remember us being super excited for this movie, when it was announced. I couldn't wait. I wish it came out actually sooner so we could have covered it then. It's out. It's actually streaming, I believe, right now on Paramount Plus for you guys if you want to watch it at home. Checked it out, actually. I went to the theaters a little ways back and saw it, but check this out, guys. Not gonna lie, it was pretty good. I had actually a really good time. I have some issues with it. I would think I would argue, and I know how this is going to sound, so just take this with a grain of salt here. It's probably my least favorite out of the Evil Dead films that I've watched, out of all of them. But keep in mind, I grade them all very highly, in my opinion, as far as the Evil Dead films. It's probably my least favorite, but it's still an incredibly great horror movie with some really sick kills, a lot of really great visuals. Lee Cronin doesn't, he really surprises as a director coming into one of his first American films here. I thought it was really great. Adam, how about you? What do you think on this one?
I think I agree. I think this is my least favorite of them all, but I mean, they're all really solid movies. This one felt more of like a hybrid between maybe the Evil Dead, the 2013 one, and the originals, kind of like a mix of campiness and horror, I guess, some sort of hybrid. I don't know if that's probably what affected it. It couldn't really find its proper footing, I think. Mm-hmm. But I mean, overall, I still had fun with it.
Yeah, it's fun when we can get another Evil Dead entry into the franchise. Whatever it would be at this point. But I can understand you feeling an imbalance. I think there is something there, and we're definitely going to talk about that. Julie, how about you? What did you think of this one?
I enjoyed this movie. I wasn't as scared as I thought it was going to be because I am, a bit of a scaredy cat. The 2013 one, I think, is probably the scariest out of all the Evil Deads. So I thought it was going to be on par with that. Based off of, the trailers and stuff like that, it looked terrifying. Unfortunately, I feel like they showed a lot in the trailers, especially considering that it is like rated R. They showed a lot of plot points. So I think it definitely is the weakest out of the franchise. However, I do appreciate the risks it took, especially focusing on a family with, like teenage and young children being kind of at the center of, this terror.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I have to, and it's interesting too that you actually bring that up. So this is the first time we've had a different setting within the Evil Dead universe. Usually, besides, I guess, Army of Darkness, obviously, that's a completely different setting. But, the main Evil Dead story, we should say, it's always in a cabin in the woods with people stuck in there alone. This movie changed that completely. I don't know if it necessarily made sense a lot of the time, but they at least tried to do it. The irony is, too, at the beginning of this movie, when it first starts, they do have like this big, long horror tease of a cabin in the woods. And now, what did you think of that, Adam? I felt like that was a little bit forced because I think this movie, a lot doesn't happen early on in this movie. There is actually a lot of setup to the story before the possession begins and all the shenanigans break loose. But do you feel like the director wanted to like kind of shake us a little bit with this big action gore scene right at the forefront of this movie?
Yeah, it was like he was trying to break that, Evil Dead mold a little bit, I guess, which I don't know. I kind of like the way that the other movies were. They all kind of... It's nice that there's consistency with them, and I'm like, all right, I'm going into an Evil Dead movie. But I don't know. I guess overall, it does end up working with this film. I don't know. I think it was okay.
Yeah, because I think at the beginning he tries to tie it into like a cabin. He has like a cabin possession, and it's one of my Julie knows this. It's one of my most hated cliches. Is like, oh, earlier, later or earlier when they flash back or flash forward. I hate that at the beginning of a movie. Just start from the beginning of the movie. I don't want to know how it's going to end up and something's going to happen. And this felt really inconsequential to the whole movie, which is I think Evil Dead Rise itself, the core family issue and the possession happening there. That's fine. I felt like this was just tacked on at the beginning of the end for really no apparent reason, but to add maybe some extra kind of kills and extra gore, which they are really good. I didn't know a drone could cut someone's mouth up like that. That was kind of interesting to see. Nevertheless, it's good. And that's classic Evil Dead right there. Those scenes are definitely something I would expect from an Evil Dead movie. And then it jumps into the movie. And kind of like you said, Adam, it feels very uneven toned. It's very family drama at the beginning of this movie, going into the sister who's coming to visit Beth is coming to visit her family because she just found out she's pregnant and she's going to, tell her sister and her family. And you kind of deal with that drama, which maybe is some of the more stronger family connections we've had in an Evil Dead movie. Because again, Adam, I think you would agree, Ashley Williams losing his girlfriend it's compelling stuff. Maybe not the most super narrative we've ever seen in a movie, but I guess it's tried to elevate the material a little bit that way, like adding this like interesting family dynamic. Do you think that's successful in any way here?
Yeah, I think that this was definitely the way to grow in terms of like it kind of, if anything, it's just expanding the universe
Right.
of the Evil Dead universe, which is I was okay with.
Yeah, what did you think of that, Julie? For someone who's seen like the other Evil Dead movies, how do you think that whole compares?
I like it. I think thematically definitely connects more to the 2013 version, where I think even in the original ones there are like some sibling connections. Like I think Ash's sisters in the first one, whatever. But like the 2013 one did a nice job of like the sibling relationship, and we see that sibling relationship again. And I think it hits a harder punch when the possessions do happen, because the people who are possessed say horrible, horrible things. And in this one, it really like shakes, the characters to their core, and it's very personal. And it's trying to, you see them struggle with trying to separate like the demon and my sister that the demon's possessing.
Let's be honest here. Let's really be honest here. Kids are taboo when it comes to horror. Yeah. Kids are something you don't see done very often. I think we've become a little more open to it. Now I think the new remake of It kind of started opening the channels for us to see children in horror movie put in terrible situations. And Evil Dead really wasn't afraid to do that here, even though I think they do hold back to a little bit of an extent, especially with the younger girl, where spoilers, kind of nothing really happens to her in the whole entire movie. She's actually perfectly fine. Nothing goes after her or hurts her or anything like that. Thought that was kind of interesting, but not that I want that. Again, that's kind of a touchy thing to say. I don't know how to word that correctly.
It's baby steps.
It's baby steps.
We do this, but all right, she's still. We gotta protect her.
But you're right. Just imagine, like I said, your mother being possessed by a demon and yelling all these terrible, horrible things to you and wants to murder you and chop you into pieces and eat your soul and climbing on the ceiling, and it's terrifying. And I think that's what the director was relying a lot on. He does have a lot of really good visuals, and I think picking Alyssa Sutherland, who plays Ellie, the mom, she's fantastic in this movie. I think she really steals the show, and I would argue she might be the best possessed of any of the films. I think she really just embodies everything that's terrifying to me. The way she the camera loves her, as they say in the film industry. Every look she has, every little eyeball, glance, everything works. Her silhouette's haunting when it's the way she moves. She really nailed this character. She really nailed the possession down. And again, I think the movie really uses it to its fullest extent. But kind of like Julie said earlier, I do feel for those gore hounds out there, for people looking for this really kind of messed up, Evil Dead film, especially coming from the recent Evil Dead remake, where I still think that is one of the scariest movies I've seen in a really long time. I don't think it matches that really. And like Adam said too, it also kind of feels a little campy in tones. Wouldn't you say, Adam? Was there anything specifically that kind of made you feel like this film was a little campier?
I think the biggest thing that stands out was the fact that the Deadites had a much more of a personality than they did in the remake, I guess, if you will.
Right.
I mean, it just stood out immediately to me. I'm like, all right, I get the tone that we're going for now here.
Right, and it feels like that. It's interesting that we make that juxtaposition because we look at the first Evil Dead film made by Sam Raimi. It was very dark and gritty, and again, it had the comedy elements, but not so much. And then we went to Evil Dead 2, and I remember us talking about it in our review where we're like, wow, this is like just night and day. Like, he really just went full comedy, and this movie really doesn't do that to that extent, but it definitely feels more in that vein. And even with the ending of this film, I think it's very similar to it, and again, in that form of spirit of a sequel. How did you feel about that, Julie? Do you felt like this was a little campier than, say, some of the other Evil Dead projects we've seen?
Yeah, and I think there's even like the addition of like the neighbor characters, which again, they were fodder for the Deadites. And then just
you're
even
gonna die.
right, like instantly, okay, we don't care about you. Because at first I'm like, when I thought it was just gonna be self-contained to that apartment, I'm like, all right, what's gonna happen here? And then they introduce them, I'm like, okay, they're the first to go. Even some of the setup was just so like over explained, like, oh, I heard that this building was built on an abandoned bank, and then like an earthquake happens that opens up the freaking bank vault, and out of everything he's like, it was just, I mean, I guess you can chalk it up to like, this book wants to be read, and it is going to, if you want to think the mysticism, devil's advocate here, but like, there's so many things where it just goes beyond the horror logic.
Had to happen.
Let me push open this weird tomb in the middle of an abandoned vault, and let me take this book that's bound with teeth, and let me pry that open. Like, I was just like, there's so many opportunities for you to just not and stop.
And Danny just happening,
right.
And Danny just happening to love music and have like a recorder, and he just so happens to find these vinyls that if you play them, it's gonna reawaken the book. Like, oh, thank God he was an audiophile. Thank God.
And even I can sell this to make money for mom. You didn't even check anything else in the vault. You opened the creepy tomb.
Yeah,
you didn't check any of the safety deposit boxes. Like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah, and I think that was one of my bigger issues with it. I think the movie really is just really corny, kind of with this whole setup, and even towards the latter end of the movie, even though we do get a cameo from Bruce Campbell's voice to show up in the recording, which fun fact for you guys out there. But still, it just, the whole wrap up of the movie just feels kind of corny. I guess we'll get into like a little bit of the spoiler territory by the end of this movie. Once we get to the end, we kind of have a giant monster syndrome as far as what Beth ends up fighting. She kind of becomes the new Ashley Williams, if you will, and she has her shotgun and she's fighting this monster. I don't really like that. That really kind of bothered me. I get it's kind of supposed to be creepy and morbid, like the family's all one and they're all one together and they're attacking her. Didn't do much for me. It felt like something out of a bad Resident Evil movie, to be honest with you. I thought there could have been something a little more creative there. What did you think of that, Adam? Did that do anything for you? Like, it didn't do much for me.
I think my issue with that is that the 2013 one had a similar big bad at the end of the movie that was fought off with a shotgun again. I'm like, and I think it's just annoying that we are again.
Right, and I think Alyssa Sutherland did such a good job as Ellie that I feel like she kind of stole the show for me throughout the whole movie. Like, I feel like it could have just been her, and that would have been really what I wanted to see as far as the finale. I didn't need this like weird monster that he tried to hide in shadows, because to their credit, they tried to do a lot of this practical. This movie is very practical heavy, and again, I will praise that always entirely. But there's only so much you can really do when it's just a glob monster kind of chasing after you. It's not really that interesting. It makes for a big bloody mess when you put it through a shredder, and that's kind of cool. But at the same time, it didn't really do much for me. I think I really wanted a lot more. And like I said, then they kind of circle back randomly to the whole, oh, look, it's not over. The spirit's going to go to the cabin and possess this girl, and it's going to start. Why did we need that? We didn't need that. There was no reason for that to continue, in my opinion. There was no reason to connect that beginning and end scene. You could have just trimmed it off. Movie would have been just as fine. Just have them walk out into the distance. Movie's over. I will give this movie a little credit. I don't want to make this review too long, but I'll give it credit for the fact that at least the director, he tries to establish that there's multiple Evil Dead books within this universe. So this movie kind of does answer the question I think a lot of fans have had is, are these all in the same universe? And yes, there's 3 different books as far as we know, at least according to this movie's mythology. So that would leave the Evil Dead remake, the original Evil Dead series, and this film as well. So this would be the 3rd book, which I don't know. What did you think of that, Adam? I thought that was a kind of cool little throw in there. So, the fans, if you don't like this, there's other books out there that it's still somewhat connected.
No, I thought it was cool. I liked that little nod. I thought it was really neat.
Yeah, and he didn't have to do that. I felt like it was just
Right.
like a nice little send away for the fans.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing too, we'll talk about as far as like the positives. I just really do like the filmmaking style. Lee Cronin definitely has a master of the camera in this movie, and kind of like we said before, the way he works with Alyssa Sutherland as Ellie, he's really able to capture her presence. But not even that, I think he does go to the well for a lot of like really interesting shots. One of the shots I really liked, and again, that I think adds to it too, is this whole movie, it takes place in the apartment building, which I think is really cool. They do kind of go out of their way to make them trapped in the apartment room where like the stairs are all collapsed, and apparently no one else in the apartment building was able to realize the stairs were collapsed or the elevator wasn't working right.
Or hear the carnage that's happening on this floor.
Yeah, apparently, everyone's deaf in that building and has no idea. But that being said, I do like the visuals he used, especially the peephole. He was really able to make a really great use of that. A lot of the times we saw when she was murdering some of the neighbors outside the house, we just saw bodies flying around. And it was just a really interesting fish lens kind of camera angle. And again, if we want to talk about maybe some of the creepier scenes, that's when Cassie's talking to her mom through the door and she's telling her like, open the door, let me in, mommy loves you. Oh, look, daddy's here. You can't see him. He's over here on the other side. That's the kind of stuff I really liked. And I think that's like that really true horror, like, gets you like really deep right in the pit of your stomach where it's like makes you uncomfortable. I don't know. I think I agree with Adam a lot where I wish there was just some more of that. Is that what you kind of were looking for, Adam? Just some real, especially I think like you said, after this remake from 2013, I think it was, that's kind of what I wanted.
The remake, it set it up to be, something that I thought the direction we were going, and then all of a sudden we just kind of took a couple steps back, it seems.
Yeah, and again, I don't think it's bad, but it's just like doesn't hold a candle to that movie. And it's funny that and I feel like that was the film everyone feared the most when it came out, and I think ironically ended up being probably the best in the series, and for most,
arguably,
if not Evil Dead 2, which I think would be the other contender for me. How about you, Julie? What do you think of that? Do you think this movie's kind of some step backs in a way as far as what they're doing with the Evil Dead franchise?
Yeah, and it's tough because and I agree with you, like it is interesting and it's a risk to limit your setting to an apartment and really one specific apartment or one floor. I feel like not being in that cabin setting kind of hurt it because not only like, yeah, they're confined to the cabin, but the woods themselves was also a threat to them. So I feel like I hate to like critique something for taking a risk, but I think back to Evil Dead belongs in the woods, deep in the woods,
Yeah, I think the building, like kind of like you said, besides the threat was like the elevator would fill with blood. That was which they kind of took from The Shining, which is fine. You got to do what you got to do. But there really wasn't much threat inside the building itself beyond the mom just like standing at the door and not letting them in. That was like the whole thing was really just not letting her back into the apartment. Other than that, I don't really think there was anything in comparison to like the woods setting that they had to worry about. Or go ahead.
I wish that there was some way that everything led back to the woods at somehow.
That would have been interesting.
Some point. That would have been really cool.
Yeah. Like maybe they ran to the woods and it followed them with them back to the woods or something.
I was just going to say that, like that opening thing but I wouldn't have wanted it in the beginning, but having, the main characters flee to like, grandpa's cabin in the woods or whatever, and then thinking they're safe and then realizing that they're not.
Yeah, because that's the story of Ashley Williams. When we look at the Evil Dead series that came out, we didn't take a look at it, but it's the Deadites never stop following you, they're going to follow you to the end of your days, and that's kind of what the story should be. This movie just, I don't know why it did that strange bookend. I really think it's just, I don't know. I really question it. And again, I think it's a cool set piece in the beginning of this film. But when you look at it as a whole, it contributed nothing to the story. And it just really kind of inflated the runtime of this movie. Because I could say that about every movie, but even an hour and 36 minutes, felt a little long in the tooth, especially with some of the setup. I think they could have kind of sped things up a little bit, start some of the creepy, imagery happening a little bit sooner. But again, for those horror fans out there, once, the pedal hits the metal, I think you're going to have a really good time. So with that being said, I think we're ready to give our final scores. I'm going to give Evil Dead Rise a 6.9 out of 10.
You don't look so good, Mom.
Nothing a big ol' hug and kiss from you won't fix. Open up now, like a good girl. That's it. Come on now.
Do it for Mom and Dad.
Kind of like Adam said, I do think it does have its issues with, a lot of some of the tone of this movie, some of the choices it made. I don't like the flashback, flash forward kind of opening, ending, bookending this movie. I think it was really unnecessary. The performances I think are fantastic. Especially I think Alyssa Sutherland really steals the show as the possessed mother, Ellie. It's creepy. It's disturbing. I think really that newish director Lee Cronin did a really fantastic job setting up his shots, pacing, the camera work and everything in this movie. It's just, sometimes you take a risk, and I always will, like Julie said, praise a risk when it's taken in a movie. I just don't know how successful this really was. Would I be against another movie? Absolutely not. I mean, take as many chances as you want and give me something new. But I will say, I just think, even with the ending, giant monster being kind of your conclusion here, didn't do much for me. I think I wanted something just a little bit more. But I think, again, if you're into horror, you're into Evil Dead, really can't go wrong. I think you're going to have a good time otherwise. But Adam, how about you? What do you think on this one?
I'm going to give Evil Dead Rise a 7.3 out of 10.
Who wants to run next? Eeny. Meeny. Miny! You.
Warrants that high of a score just because of Alyssa Sutherland's performance alone. I mean, between that and the cinematography, they were very enjoyable to me. And I enjoyed the touch of campiness to a certain extent.
Sure.
But I mean, beyond that, it was still a decent film. Would I watch it again over the other ones? I don't know about that, but it's still a nice addition to the series, I think.
Yeah, I mean, what they did with a cheese grater in this movie is something that just I'll give them that. They didn't do much in this movie for me as far as like some of the horror scenes, but you nailed it with the cheese grater. I'll give you that.
The second that thing came out was just
like that's
instant
not good.
no.
That's not good. Not good at all. Julie, how about you? What do you think on this one?
I'm going to give Evil Dead Rise a 7 out of 10.
Even its final remnants will come after you. You must run. All you can do is run. This horror will not stop until innocence is destroyed. Until evil.
I appreciate the risks that they took, even if they didn't completely, stick the landing. We've said it, Alyssa Sutherland was fantastic in her role. Like when I think of Evil Dead now, you think of Ashley Williams. And as much as I think the 2013 movie is a superior film to this one, she's probably the next person I think of beyond Ash, because she was just that good. The cinematography was great. The moments that were creepy and disturbing and disgusting were. So, I'm definitely looking forward to another outing in the Evil Dead world.
Yeah, I kind of wish this movie gave us just a little bit more. And that remake just did such a good job with the horror elements that it's kind of hard to to do something just as good when you have a director that just knew what they wanted. You could tell Lee Cronin, though, wanted to pay tribute to the original Evil Dead in his own way, and he definitely does, and it comes across, I think, extremely well. It's just, a little more horror maybe next time. Maybe sometimes I think Evil Dead Flourish is just slightly better when it leans more into just the pure horror aspect of the film. Sometimes when that campiness comes in, unless you're really Bruce Campbell, he's really the only man I know that can get away with it and make it at least incredibly interesting. But again, guys, check it out. Let us know in the comments what you thought. Did you like Evil Dead Rise? Was it one of your favorites, least favorite? Rank them in the comments below. Let us know what you guys think. But thank you all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. My name's Kevin. That guy's Adam. That's Julie. We are your Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time.
If you guys like what you've seen here today, consider giving this video a like and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay up to date with everything Real Movie Guys related, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget, all you audio listeners at home, we are available on many podcasting platforms. Just search The Real Movie Guys, you should pop right up. Thank you again all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time.